Hi, everyone. Like Mel has said, I'm just going to be giving my experience on what it's like doing a scoping review. So this is actually the first scoping review I had to do as part of the IDA. So it's really focused on understanding the support needs of family caregivers at the end of life. Can I have the next slide, please? So I'm going to start off by just painting a bit of a picture from where I'm coming from. So I work with Hospice in the Weald, and when I first started, they had just opened up a new service called the Cottage Hospice service. And the Cottage Hospice service was essentially a home plus, like a home away from home service, with family caregivers really at the center of the caregiving process. So that essentially means that family caregivers can come in with their loved ones who are in their last weeks of life. Like this is usually within a month, or that's 2 to 3 weeks usually, of their loved one passing away, and they come in and they're supported. Usually at this point in time, a lot of things are happening. So oftentimes there are a lot of care needs, and traditionally at home, you might have to wait long periods of time to have a district nurse come out. You might have to wait longer to maybe see a physician or maybe get a prescription. Things often happen very quickly. And getting that support from volunteers and staff members is what Cottage Hospice was really bringing in a kind of 24 hours a week, regardless of what the circumstances was. So the building itself has 10 bedrooms. So these are like en suites. So they have personal bathrooms, they have sofa beds. So essentially loved ones can stay overnight. They can stay for however long their loved ones are admitted. They have a kitchen facility that they can use. They have laundry rooms. They can go in and do their own laundries or get support from volunteers to actually do laundry. There's a common area, different common areas actually. There's a cafe area, which is actually really nice. So people can go in, have a chat, do work, a puzzle, and really get to know maybe other people within the setting. So essentially, this service was built to really empower those that are really caring for their loved ones in the final days. Can I get the next slide, please? So what I really observed really being in that service was that family caregivers are an important part of loved ones' end-of-life care. So even outside of this setting in the home, family caregivers have such a huge part to play in supporting their loved ones. Sometimes it's not only with meals, but actually like simple tasks like using the bathroom or wiping themselves or having the drugs administered to them. So they play such an important part. And the goal was to design and deliver the right kind of cost-effective support intervention for them. But really, if my support review was almost like working backwards to really understand, are we actually targeting the right support needs for those people who are providing their hands-on care support? So my scoping review was kind of bringing together expert knowledge on a family carer support needs during end-of-life care. So you might at this point start getting this kind of idea that a scoping review itself is taking that broad approach. You're not really necessarily answering a very specific research question, but you are taking a very broad approach to really understanding a topic or something that's of interest. Can I get the next slide, please? So I have a question, and that question was, what are the support needs of family caregivers of patients receiving end-of-life care? You might get to explore this further along as we go in the session, but essentially I have the population, which are family caregivers of patients. We have the setting itself is not particularly relevant to my question, but I do have a time period, which is the last 12 weeks of life. Can I get the next slide, please? So what am I doing? What did I have to do to prepare to do my scoping review? The very first thing I am thankful for to the ARC is they provided me a mentor, which is in Prof. Caroline Nicholson from University of Surrey. So she actually really also focuses on end-of-life care, particularly frailty. And she was such an important part of really helping me build my knowledge base to make sure I actually know what I'm doing and I actually have a good understanding of what it is to do a scoping review. And I was also put in touch with the librarian, Anna Peckham, from the University of Kent. And I think you'll probably hear this from the breakout groups as well, is that you need a solid team supporting you to be able to do a review, a proper review. You might think that you want to do it on your own, but trust me, my experience so far is that it's not a solo job. You need the support of experts to really help you go to the next level, even if it's just a scoping review. And the one thing that Professor Caroline Nicholson pointed me to is the Joanna Briggs Institute module on systematic scoping review. So I signed up for this module. It's actually available to anybody all over the world, even though it's a course that was designed by a university in Australia. But you can sign up and you can actually get started. They start off very basically helping you understand what scoping review is. Why would you do a scoping review? How is a scoping review different from a systematic review? I think the very first thing is that, first of all, you're probably not needing to do critical appraisal of the actual research papers that you're including. You don't really need to register the protocol that you do on Prospero. But essentially, these are things that you get to know a bit more. You get to know a bit more of even how to do a PCOS. They give you exercises on that. And that was such an important part of really understanding, why am I doing a scoping review, first of all, and why is it I'm doing a scoping review versus a systematic review. And Professor Caroline Nicholson also pointed me towards a book called Doing a Literature Review in Health and Social Care by Helen Eviard. You can actually Google, search that on Amazon right now and order that book for yourself if you want to get started on a literature review. I'd highly recommend you just get that book and just get started. And a huge part of that is actually doing a protocol. I know some people tend to think that they can work backwards and just start searching, or maybe tell someone these are my ideas. But I really, really encourage you to just sit down and write a protocol. So I'm working with the scoping review, but this, having gone through this process of preparing, it actually gave me the confidence to do another scoping review. So I'm actually working with a different team now on a different topic itself. And one of the things I was able to bring to the table was, actually, guys, let's start off by writing a protocol and actually say, what are we searching for? What's the kind of time frame we're doing? And what ended up happening was that we actually end up doing a lot of the writing up front. So when you're done your review, you don't have to think, why did I actually make the decision to run my search from 2005 to 2010 versus running my search from 2000 to 2020, for example. So these are things you have to keep in mind. And a key part of my protocol was I actually included consultation exercises. So consultation exercises themselves are actually something that is recommended by Arksy and O'Malley, 2006. I'll post that reference in the chat as well. They talk about consultation exercises as things that actually help you with stakeholder engagement. So my consultation exercise, although I'm yet to conduct that at this point in time, actually will involve me interviewing staff members who work within settings to support family caregivers as they're caring for their loved ones. The goal is to really understand what they're saying in practice happens. So what are the ways you're actually supporting these family caregivers? What are the things that family caregivers are asking for that they need with hands-on care? Are the right facilities in place to actually support them? Is it the right model that's running along? And the good thing about this is that it actually helps me understand if what I'm doing actually is relevant to practice. So I'm taking what I'm finding, even after talking to them, I'm taking them and saying, this is what I found. What do you think? Does this actually make sense? Is this actually relevant to your practice? Is this relevant to your setting? So this, I would say, is such an important part of really getting started thinking about your protocol and your search strategies. Like then you can even say, okay, I'm going to include a stakeholder engagement component, which I think, should be part of all reviews, honestly. And I believe that's something that's considered best practice. Can I get the next slide, please? So thinking about where I am now, just giving you an idea. So I actually had this, with the support of the librarian, we ran a search. So we got 3,300 articles. So essentially, when you run a search, you take all the parameters you've set. So you have all the search terms. Like, for example, a key part of my search term was terminal care. So that terminal was specific and not end-of-life care, because we found that end-of-life care was too broad. So terminal really helped to kind of narrow down what I was searching. And I would look for family caregivers as a huge part, as you can imagine. That's in my topic and that's in my question. Hospice care was also important. I played with using out of hospital setting and home settings to see if I would find something it would catch as much as I needed to help me screen out, but I find I was getting too much. So we ended up just with 3,300. And then what I did was I looked through the titles. Actually, we ran another search to actually further refine it, and that got me down to 1,509 actually. And then what I did was I looked at that 1,509. I just looked at that titles and I went through titles, and there were some that were obviously out. Like sometimes there will be papers who slip through the crack, and you'll find a paper that's like completely out of scope. So that's why screening initially titles and abstracts really helps to narrow down. Now I'm at 144 articles. I'm now at the point where I'm screening to really get to the next step of full text articles, bringing them together. And what I'm finding is that there are things that really are clearly out. So there are papers where you read the abstract and you're like, okay, this is clearly not within the scope. Although the title would look really nice and might be relevant, it's clearly out. And then there are articles that are clearly in. But then there's this I don't know pile where sometimes it feels like it's mounting, but apparently that's totally normal. Talking to my mentor actually helped me work out that actually it's part of the process of really refining down your papers, that you'll have a list of papers that sometimes you're not really sure, but actually as you do more screening and you go along, you get a clearer idea of the kind of papers you're looking for. And you go back to your search strategy and you know the parameters you set. That really helps you to understand, okay, now I can go back to my I don't know part back from the beginning and now clearly eliminate some more. So that I would say is such an important part of where I am now to really help me move forward to the next step. Can I get the next slide, please? So where am I going? The next obvious step, of course, is to kind of like bring together all the full text articles that I review and really bring together my findings from that. And then the next step, of course, is to put together the consultation exercise with the COVID pressures. These are other things that you have to think about with actually running things where you engage people outside of maybe the core team, is that you have to be aware of kind of like the time period. We're in COVID setting, it's not really convenient with the rise and the fall of Omicron now. Hopefully we're on the full end of it, is that when I would love to go into the setting and speak to staff members, nobody really is. That's really restricted at the moment. So hopefully as we get towards the tail end of that, that gets easier to kind of actually do the consultation exercise. But the findings from this will help really augment what I'm finding. This is why I think scoping reviews themselves are such an important part to help you understand, is this relevant to practice? Is what I'm finding actually useful to what's going on within the setting? Can I get the next slide, please? So just reflecting on all I've said so far, if there are some key things I'd love for you to take away, is that for you to have that methodological rigor, you need team effort. You need people to support you. You need people who actually know a lot more than you. I know it's really nice when you get people in a kind of like a similar stage to work with you, but within that team, there has to be someone who has expert knowledge. And getting that expert knowledge also helps you build that knowledge base, because they will sometimes point you to the right resources and materials. Like being in the seminar is a good one, because that show will give you lots of resources on how to actually build your evidence base and help you with decision making. Another thing that I've learned is that you have to keep a log of what you've done and what you're doing. Like any good researcher, you know that documenting is so important, and even documenting what you're thinking. Why did I decide to not include this paper versus not? That also helps you clear out your I don't know pile. And it helps you essentially when you write up your actual paper to really help people understand and really understand the replicable part of it. So if they understand why you made that decision, it helps to further build your kind of build the transparency of the article and show that you've done the necessary rigor to make sure this is a high quality review. And then another thing too is really understanding that your clinical colleagues, so the people, if you're someone who's embedded in practice, your clinical colleague is different from your methodological colleague. So the person who will help you really give that kind of rigor in screening your articles or reviewing the things that you've done might be different from the person in your clinical setting, like the nurse who you might talk to and really understand what it is that's happening in practice. And really understanding that those groups of people actually add different things and bring different sort of added value to your review itself. So yeah, that's I believe that's my last slide. Yeah, but thank you all for listening.